All right, hi. Welcome back. So this one is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, it's going to be pretty heavy, pretty dark, so warning up front. But I'm actually doing it a little bit differently than I normally do it. So normally, I have a couple of notes that are typed up on my laptop so I can kind of keep my place and I remember where I'm going and what I'm covering. But this go around, I'm just gonna kind of wing it. I'm just gonna talk about it just as I remember it because honestly, I really couldn't bring myself to even type up notes. It was just this day in particular, covering this day and this topic is just so raw that I just think it's probably best for me to just go into it and just hope for the best. So thank you for sticking with me. And yeah, I just appreciate any amounts of grace that you can kind of extend to me here because I normally try to keep myself pretty objective and pretty even keeled when it comes to my emotions and things like that. But yeah, this one's going to be a little bit weightier for me. So again, just please be kind, be patient, and I will get through this as best as I can. So when we last left off, to recap, we covered the fact, like just some funny stories about my dad being really captivating. We talked about just some of the last bits of problems I had with him, some other things that had kind of come up while he was in the hospital, my last time ever seeing him alive, and then I dropped the bombshell that my uncle had gotten with my dad's girlfriend and they had started an affair pretty much towards the beginning of his hospital visit, as far as I can understand, because they've not given me quite a straight answer on exactly when it was, but as far as I'm able to piece together, because I'm kind of just left with a bunch of puzzle pieces, and that's really what I've been doing this entire time, is just trying to put all those pieces together to figure out what's what. But that's basically what I can understand, is that they've been together since my dad pretty much got in the hospital, maybe a few days after, like 4 or 5 days after he'd been in the hospital. So anyway, that was where we left off. So yeah, so I found out this information. It was a lot to take in. It was really hard for me to process all of this again. I felt a lot of betrayal, but I really didn't even know how to process this information. And I definitely didn't want to go and see my dad. I really wasn't sure if they were planning on telling him, because it kind of seemed like they were, like from what I had heard. And I just didn't, I really didn't want to get involved, so I didn't ever go back to go see him. And so yeah, so that Sunday, because my dad passed on a Sunday, June 2nd, my boyfriend and I had been hanging out all day, all morning, and it was honestly, it's really weird, like just how all of this worked out. My boyfriend, usually he has things to do, like he's like, okay, I'm gonna go work out, like, and he leaves. But for some reason, like, both of us were kind of stalling that day. I don't know what it was, but we were both just sitting there and like chatting, and like we were finding new reasons to chat about new random things, and neither one of us were in like a particular hurry that day. For whatever reason, we just weren't in really much of a hurry. And so we're together, and it's about like 2:00 in the afternoon, and I get a phone call from my dad's number, and my boyfriend was in the middle of a thought, and so I was like, oh, okay, like I'll call him back as soon as we're done with this conversation, because he was planning on leaving. So I was like, I'll call him back in a minute. And so I didn't answer. But then I look down and I see that his girlfriend's number is calling me like immediately after. It was like no break in between. And when I see it, I see that I had missed a text message, because there's like the preview of like the last message that person had sent to you, or the last message that was sent whenever someone calls you usually. And it said code blue now. And I was like, what? And so I said, and I was like, I need to answer this. Like, I'm sorry, I need to answer this. And I was like, and I answered, and she was screaming into the phone, just screaming, code blue, code blue, code blue, code blue, like wailing, inconsolable. Like I couldn't get any I couldn't ask her any questions. She wasn't responding to me. She just kept screaming over and over again, code blue now, code blue now. And so I immediately throw myself together. My boyfriend, throws himself together, and my mom, I mentioned it to her, and we only live, I think I've mentioned this before, like maybe 7 minutes from the hospital, like max. And so we all just jump into the car and head down there. And my mom couldn't find parking, so she dropped us off at the front circular drive. And so my boyfriend and I jumped out of the car and ran up. You have to check in before you can go up to the top. So we stood in the line, checked in, got our badges, ran up to the top level. We took the elevators to the top level. And when we get up there, his girlfriend is sitting in the waiting room on that floor is like in the hallway in between the elevators and like the hospital rooms. And so she's just sitting there in a chair, like loudly sobbing, just absolutely hysterical, like just sobbing. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out what exactly is going on, because I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. All she told me was code blue now. And I'm like, okay, what's going on, And so I go and sit next to her. And mind you, again, reminder, at this point, I know that she's been, having an affair with my uncle. I know that at this point. But I need answers. And, I just see her sobbing. So I go and sit down next to her and tried to comfort her as best as I could. And she was not even responding to me. She's just sobbing and screaming, like literally screaming in the hallway. It was wild. And then her daughter came up there like almost immediately after us. She was like the next elevator up. So I guess she had let her daughter know. And her daughter comes out, and she, I immediately get up and move, because no one knows how to comfort their parent better usually than the child. So I move out of the way so that way she can sit down and comfort her mom. And my boyfriend and I sit next to each other like a chair over. And he and I, we're just sitting there. And I'm trying to keep it together at this point. I don't really like to break down, especially in public. I don't really care for all of that. And I know I need to hold myself together because I need to figure out exactly what's going on, and I'm trying to steel myself for if I need to make decisions or whatever it is that's going to happen. But I started looking over towards the room, and like that room I know he's in, and I just see like the nurse, like a couple nurses just staring into the room. And it's at that point I knew, like I felt it, and I knew that, I knew he wasn't with us anymore. I could just feel it. And so my mom, she's still parking at this point, and then they roll his machine out, like the machine that you're hooked up to. They rolled his machine out of his room, and that was obviously confirmation. And his girlfriend just starts screaming no over and over again. She's just no over and over and over again. And like just like that, like over and over and over again. And they approach us, the doctors and the nurses approach us. I'm sitting there again trying to hold it in and hold it together, because I need to know what happened. I need to know what's going on. And honestly, when one person is grieving really big like that, I don't like to grief shame. I know we all grieve differently, but when one person is grieving so loudly and in such a big way, there's really not space for multiple people to do that. So I was just like, okay, like she was not going to be able to pull it together, and so the doctors approached us, and obviously they're focused on her because, she's the loudest. She's the one having the biggest reaction. And her daughter, like when they approached, they're like, oh, are you his, and the girlfriend's daughter was like, that's his daughter over there. And so I, have a lot of respect for her because she at least, directed them in my direction. And they tell us what happened. And it was crazy too, because even like the nurses kept coming over, and when the nurses came over, like they didn't, again, like I'm trying to hold it together and I'm trying to listen, I'm trying to take in the information, and that's how I am. I'm a processor, and I don't process things instantaneously, and it takes me a little while, and I want to take in all the information before I have, like, honestly, before I can have any sort of a big reaction. I usually just need a little bit of time. And so, I'm trying to take in this information, and so the nurses, they keep like coming and standing in front of me because they think that, his girlfriend is like the only one. And then they're like, you need to move, like they keep trying to move them. I have a very vivid memory of that, like the nurses continuing to like put their backs to me and standing in the way when I'm trying to listen to what the doctor's saying. And then they had to keep moving nurses because there was like a bunch of them that came out. And I think it's because, again, this floor is not really used to seeing patient deaths, because this floor is like the, okay, you're about to be discharged floor. It doesn't happen very often on this floor. And so I think all of them were really shaken, and just were not expecting it. And so they all came out. And so we're standing there, or they're standing there in front of us. And the doctor, so what happened was my dad, after physical therapy, he went to use the restroom. And after he was finished, he stood up and he hit the floor. He was in there with the physical therapist because the physical therapist always helped him. But he passed away from VFib. So what we do know is that my dad had low blood pressure, which is something I don't think I mentioned before. They started him on potassium because he had issues with his blood pressure before. But on top of that, he had irregular heartbeat. And so a mixture of having an irregular heartbeat, like an arrhythmia, with having low blood pressure means like having low blood pressure, people usually think, oh, that's a good thing. The lower your blood pressure is, the better. But if it gets too low, it's not able to pump blood to keep your body going. And so his heart literally just stopped. His heart stopped. And they weren't able to restart it. They tried everything. They tried different, they worked on him for a very long period of time. And they just couldn't get it started again. And so, so they couldn't get his heart started again. So they, tried to put him up in his bed and everything, I guess. And that's why what was taking most of the bulk of the time, for them to come get us, I guess. But yeah, his girlfriend, again, the whole time the doctor is trying to deliver this information, she's still just wailing, screaming and wailing, and which is not probably the best reaction that I could have had. At this point, I start to get a little irritated because I'm like, because the doctor clearly is like, who wants to stand there and like take questions when somebody is screaming in your ear? Like, he made an exit as quickly as he could. And I had questions. I had things I wanted to ask. I had like clarifications and things I wanted to know. And I couldn't ask the doctor because she's sitting there having such a big reaction. And so it's like, it's at that point when I'm like, I understand, again, you're not necessarily in your mind. The appropriate response would have been to probably excuse yourself. Like my mom had to do a couple of times because, for all intents and purposes, this was her friend for such a long time. Like they were friends for such a long time, and she wasn't even reacting like that. Like she understood, and so she kept excusing herself, and so it was a whole thing. And so I was really upset. I was really frustrated and upset by that. And then the physical therapist who was there when he passed came out, and he was really broken up about it. I felt very sorry for him because, he was like, your father was a great man, and like, and I'm so sorry. And my dad's girlfriend was hugging him and then starts screaming, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, over and over again, just screaming it. And like, again, like, knowing what I know at that point, I'm sitting there like fully being like, you were actively cheating on my dad with his brother while he was in the hospital, and like, you're gonna have the nerve to react this way. Like, you're gonna have the nerve to like have such a big response and take up so much space with your grief that there's literally not space for anybody else. Like, and I start getting really upset. I start getting really upset at that point. And then I find out that she had already texted my uncle, because my she had texted my uncle and apparently declared my dad dead before he was even declared dead. Because my mom tells me afterwards, because she had gotten a call from my aunt, and was like, he died. And so she heard that before she even got upstairs, before we were even told by the doctors formally. And so this woman, my dad's girlfriend, called my uncle, declared my dad dead before he was actually declared dead, and let him drive that way, which like really upset me, because I'm like, okay, so you're putting him in danger too now, because, you know, who drives reasonably when they're that upset? And so like, you told him he was dead before we even knew he was, and then like, you spoke that into the universe, you like, my dad is dead before we were even formally told. And so my uncle's driving to us in that way. And so I was really upset. And she's screaming so loud. And again, it just didn't stop. It did not stop. She was just sobbing and screaming so loud. You know, people were literally like looking around the corner and were coming over and trying to comfort her and like all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there just getting so angry and so upset about all of that. And so, so they were like, you know, he's ready if you want to go see him. And, like, I obviously did, and we wanted to. And I said, you know, we should probably wait for my uncle. Traditionally, in the past, my uncle has not handled loss very well. I've seen him do some pretty bad things and react in a pretty big and violent way before, with death. And, you know, so was my mom. And so we were like, okay, we're just going to wait until he comes, and then we'll all go in together. And so he comes in, almost walks right past us, but then he sees us, and then he comes over and he hugs us. And then we all go in. And she collapses into a chair. His girlfriend collapses into a chair and starts sobbing again. And my uncle collapses onto my dad's body, and starts kissing him. And he's sobbing loudly and kind of just being very, you know, and just keeps yelling, "Fly high, bro, fly high," over and over and over and over again. And I'm sitting there, and it's at this point, you know, because like, my boyfriend, again, he knows, like, and I guess in that way, I guess I'm a complicated woman, right? I know I'm not an easy person to comfort. I don't want to break down and cry in front of other people, but I am also not like, you know, like, don't, like, I like, and so my boyfriend wasn't like all over me during this whole time, you know, but it's at this point, he holds my hand, because I think he knows that I was getting really upset. Like, I was getting really angry, and I'm like, I had to dissociate for a second, because I'm standing there, you know, watching these two people who I know caused just an absolute immeasurable amount of harm to my father. And I'm like, did he know before he passed? And they're acting like this. And it's like, I felt like they were acting their guilt, you know, and it's like, and in acting their guilt, they are taking up so much space, and it's such a farce, and it is such a show. And it made me so angry that I'm literally sitting there, and they still had my dad's TV was still on. He had rugby on, And so I'm literally just sitting there like, I'm watching rugby because I'm trying to dissociate, because I know if I check into this moment, it's not going to be a good thing. And so I'm trying to be respectful as I can, because again, I'm not an expert with grief, okay? I know everybody grieves differently, and just because you've done something to harm somebody does not mean that you aren't going to grieve them, right? And so I'm trying to give them their space to grieve. I'm trying to give them their space to have that moment and that guilt and whatever it is they're feeling. I'm trying to give them that space. I know that's probably not my job, and that was definitely not my responsibility, but I was trying to give them that space and that time to grieve however they needed to, because I knew that was probably going to be the last moment, because I knew we were going to cremate him. Like, I knew that. I knew they weren't going to have like a viewing. They weren't going to have another moment with him like this. So, I just kind of sucked it up. I dissociated for a little bit. I was just watching the TV, just trying to not be present. I was holding my dad's hand. It was cold, so I know he'd been gone for a while. And I was just trying to just not be present. And then after my uncle finishes sobbing onto my dad's chest and into his face and finishes with all of that, he pops up and he looks at me and he says, okay, we need to tell the family, we need to tell everyone. And I'm like, I just lost my dad. Like, I don't want to tell anyone yet. I want to take a moment, and I at least want to like try to process this information. Like, I haven't even had a chance to process this yet. I'd rather not like put it out there yet before I've had the chance to process this. I'm not ready to be bombarded with like text messages and phone calls, like as well meaning as they are. And it's like, and I appreciate all of them now, obviously. Like, I appreciate everyone checking in and wishing me well and wishing my dad well and everything like that. I just, like, at the time, like, it was so fresh and so new. I didn't really want that yet. Like, I just needed some time before I was bombarded with all these people. And so I asked him, I was like, can we wait? Can we wait? Like, I understand there's a couple family members you need to tell, but can you please, like, can we wait at least until, Tuesday? Because ironically, we had rescheduled my dentist appointment for Monday. And so, mind you, it's Sunday. So literally, I'm getting my wisdom tooth extracted the next day. So I'm also sitting there thinking, I'm going to have to take like all these phone calls. Like, I'm already going into this planning mode and just trying to figure all of this stuff out. And it's too late for me to cancel, because I had to get special permissions with like my stuff, like with my bleeding disorder. So it's literally like, it would take a really long time for me to have to reschedule. So it's like, I kind of had to keep this appointment, even though it was really, really poorly timed. And so I'm just thinking to myself, like, I need a moment. Like, I need some time to think about this. I just, like, tomorrow would be great to just not have anything can we just wait? Can we wait until Tuesday? And I asked him, and he's like, no, we have to tell the family. I'm going to go tell the family. And just insisted, like, did not respect my request, did not respect me or a boundary that I had tried to set up, and was gone before I could even argue with him anymore. Like, left the room to go make the phone calls and let people know. And that was awful. That was really awful. And so my mom went out after him. She went out after him because she wanted to make sure that he didn't react, didn't do anything that he shouldn't have been doing. And so she went out after him. And so it's now just my dad's girlfriend, her daughter, and my boyfriend and I in there with my dad. And she's still collapsed in the chair. She stopped screaming at this point, and her daughter's comforting her. And we just stood there. We just stood there and sat there for, I don't know, maybe like, it felt like forever, but it was probably only a couple minutes of just silence. And then eventually, because I was like, I would like a moment by myself. Like, I'd like a moment with him, without like, I just like a private moment, you know. And I don't feel like I need to actually explain that to anybody why I needed a private moment with him. I just wanted a private moment with him. And so I said it. I was like, hey, and I thought reciprocity. I said, you know, would you like a moment alone with him? I asked her. You know, again, I'm trying to be polite. I don't know why, but I'm trying to be polite. I guess I was just brought up that way. And so, trying to be polite, I asked her if she wants a moment with my dad. And she goes, oh, no. Well, do you want a moment alone with him? And I was like, actually, yeah, I would really like that. And she gets up and starts acting kind of weird. She's like, okay, well, okay, I'm gonna go. Oh, my charger's over there. Can you grab my charger? And she's like, you know, not crying anymore. Like not crying, but she's acting kind of weird. And I mean, I guess there's no normal way to act after somebody you love passes. She claims she loved him. I don't know. And so I'm grabbing the stuff for her, handing it to her. And she's like, okay, well, I'll see you later. And I was like, okay. And she like kind of was in a rush to leave all of a sudden. And then her daughter, was like, okay, Mom, like, say goodbye to Robert. Make sure you say goodbye to Robert. And, as soon as her daughter said that, she starts screaming again, no, over and over and over again, and just sobbing loudly and screaming loudly, and collapses onto my dad, collapses onto him, and, you know, has a moment on him like that. And I'm sitting there again, just like trying not to be like angry, trying not to be like, I'm mentally trying to be anywhere but in that room, because again, I'm sitting there just like, how dare you do this? Like, how dare you do this? Like, I was very, very upset. I was very upset and very angry at this reaction. Because again, I'm sitting there fully knowing what's going on. And like, so yeah, so I was really upset. I was really angry. And so, so she does that for a while, and then eventually stands up, like straightens up, stops sobbing, and then walks out the door with her daughter. They leave. And it's at that point I break down and I start crying, and, sorry. And, yeah, it's at that point I break down and start crying. And then, I'm able to have my moment with my dad. I have a moment with him. It was a pretty good moment. You know, it was a pretty good moment. And so I had my moment with him, and then not soon after, my uncle walks in, his wife, soon to be ex-wife, walks in, so my aunt, and I start to think, like, I wonder if that's why his girlfriend left so quick, because, like, she knows, and so I wonder if that's why she left so quick. And my mom comes back in, so the three of them come in. My aunt, literally, I guess my uncle called her. She was working that day, and my uncle called her and was like, I need you now. And so of course she dropped what she was doing and came. Even though they're, you know, going through a divorce, like, there's still a lot of, like, you know, like, love and relationship there, especially at this point, you know. And so she comes and she's there, and we all have another moment together, and we're all standing there, and my uncle proceeds to take a selfie of himself with my dad. And, like, I know what some of you are thinking, that's really weird, but in Polynesian culture, it's pretty common to take selfies with the body. Like, it's pretty common. Honestly, our funerals, more of the same, you know, it's very common to take a selfie with the body. But the problem with that is my dad specifically requested that we not do that. He said, you know, I don't want any of the traditional, like, I don't want anyone taking a picture of me after I've passed. I don't want people seeing me like that. I don't want Fossa Moa. I don't want people seeing me after I've passed. Like, please promise me that you won't let that happen. Anyway, my mom and I promised him that. And so we did, you know, but we were both like, shut up. Like, why are you saying that? Like, you're not going anywhere. Like, we both said that to him. And he's like, I know, but just in case. So, like, he had said it to all of us, and he'd said it to my uncle in front of us. So I know he knew. He made us all promise. And my uncle took the picture anyway. And my mom, you know, was like, what are you doing? Like, no, why did you do that? And he was like, oh, it's just for me. And so I was like, you know what? If it's just for you, it's just for you. Like, I get it. It's okay. That's your brother. You're never going to see him again. Like, if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. I was able to also, you know, he was in a neck brace the whole time he was in the hospital. He hated the neck brace. I took the neck brace off of him, you know. I'm like, you don't need this anymore. And I just took it off him. So he was able to, you know. And so, so yeah, you know, it was a lot. It was really emotional, really hard. And so my uncle's like, yeah, I already let these people know. I let people know. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, well, can you wait to tell extended family and friends and everything until like a little bit later? And he was like, yeah, I'll wait a little bit. And I was like, okay, cool. Cause it's like, I don't like, it's okay to tell close family, like the immediate close family, like that's fine. But like, I didn't want it to be a snowball that was going out of control where, again, I'm getting a million phone calls and like all of this other stuff that I'm trying to vet. And so, so I was like, you know, like it was a lot. And so then they asked me, you know, like, what do you want to do now? What do we do now? You know, my aunt asked me that, actually, my mom. And I said, we're going to Costco and we're going to go eat a hot dog. Because that's, you know, that was my dad. Like that was like, honestly, all he ever wanted to do. He loved cheap food, like really bad food, but especially Costco hot dogs. That's all he was begging for the whole time he was in the hospital. And he loved Costco hot dogs. So I was like, you know what? We're going to go to Costco and we're going to go get a hot dog. That's what we're doing. And it's like, that sounds crazy to probably normal people. Like, you just witnessed something and had a really traumatic experience, but that's what we're doing. Like, that is what my dad would want. And so, yeah, so they were like, okay, like, we're going to go, let's go. And so, my uncle's like, I'm not going. And I was like, what do you mean you're not going? I'm like, no, come on, please. And I'm like, I begged him to go with us. To go with us and just be with us, because it's like, this is a family thing, you know. And he was like, no, I'm not going. And then my aunt was like, okay, so are you going home? Because, you know, the kids are really upset, like, because they have 2 kids, and she's like, the kids are really upset, especially our oldest. And he was like, no, I'm not going home. And I just knew at that point. I'm like, I know where you're going. You're going to go to his girlfriend's house. That's where you're going. So, like, instead of being with family, instead of being with the daughter, instead of being with your kids, because if you're not going to be with me, go be with your kids. Go take care of your kids. You know, like, that's a big thing for me, is it's like, take care of your kids, you know? If you're not going to be with us, you're going to put yourself first. Like, when you're a parent, honestly, like, I know some people don't like this, but it's like, your kids didn't ask to be here. They did not ask to be born. They didn't ask for you to have them. They didn't have a choice in the matter. So honestly, in some ways, I don't care if they're over 18, like, it is your responsibility to check in on them and put their emotional needs above your own sometimes and make sure that they're okay. Like, yes, you may want to go and get drunk and forget about this night with his girlfriend, but check in on your kids first. Like, I don't care what you do after you check in on your kids. So he just went straight there. And so we're at Costco. We stopped by a 7-Eleven, which was funny, and I picked up We grabbed packets of mayo because my dad loved mayo on his hot dog. That's something that we do. I grew up doing that because of him. So we grabbed some packets of mayo. I bought like a Slim Jim because he would have loved that too. And we went to Costco, ate hot dogs, and again, who's sitting there? My aunt, my mom, my boyfriend, and it's us. And yeah, it was honestly, and it was hard too, just sitting there, because it's like, you know, I think they wanted to be more like action oriented and they wanted to solve things, and I just was not in the headspace to deal with any of that right now. Like, I just was not in the right headspace. I'm sitting there with a million questions about what happened and when, you know, and I knew I wasn't going to get any answers. I knew I wouldn't get any closure with any of that stuff about like what exactly happened in his last moments. What did he know? Like, I wasn't going to get any closure on that. And honestly, even if they told me to this day, I wouldn't believe what they had to say. Like, why should I believe what they had to say? So that was the day of, and it was a lot. It was very emotional. I went home, before my dad had passed, like before he even honestly went in the hospital. It was really weird because I just started thinking back about how I really felt like he had slowly, and it sounds weird, but like slowly just been preparing us and me for his passing. Like, before he even went in the hospital, this was like last year, like 2023, like December of 2023, he gave me this duffel bag and he said, you know, all of my important documents are in here. I want you to have this just in case. And I was like, what are you doing with that? Like, what do you mean just in case? Where are you going? Like, and my mama and I kept joking and calling it, you know, like his little death pack. We kept joking and calling it that because I was like, what? Like, why are you doing this? Like, are you going somewhere? Is there something we don't know? And he was like, no, it's just in case. And so he gave me, you know, his duffel bag with all this stuff in there. There's a bunch of pictures in there, his degree, and like everything in there. And then, you know, but like on top of that, again, like with the apartment, like everything was moved out of his apartment. We'd already, you know, packed everything up. We had rehomed his dog, so that wasn't a problem anymore. Like, everything that like could have been a problem, like, really wasn't a problem anymore. We had done a lot of the legwork. Like, I'd sorted through a lot of his belongings already when we were moving him out, because it was like I was putting them into containers when I was packing it, and so I was already kind of cleaning stuff out before he even passed. And so it's like, I feel like, and I told him that when I went in afterwards, I was like, I feel like I'm doing the work that people usually do after their parents pass, because it's like, you know, your parents pass and then you're like, why did you hoard this? Like, you're sitting there like going through it, and I did it before. And so it was really weird because it just felt like, you know, he'd been like preparing me for this like for a while, and it was really odd. And so like, so that night I get home after eating the hot dog, and I just kind of sat on my bed and was looking at pictures, you know, going through old memories and like just trying to like remember some positive things and not get too trapped in the negative, because it was just a very bad day. Again, I didn't have a lot of space to ask a lot of questions, but also interestingly, so I had access to his medical records because I was the one who was able to like get him signed up for like digital medical records and his portal and stuff, and he wanted me to have the portal like for me so I could access all his things. So I was always looking at his physician's notes and stuff, so I was able to pull up his physician's notes, his physician notes and everything, and look at what his blood pressure was, read his like, you know, all of that information, and just read the details of like, you know, what the end of life looked like. And why he passed, and like ultimate like cause of death and everything. I was able to look through all that information, which in some ways actually did give me a lot of peace, because it's like, again, I wasn't able to hear all of what the doctor said, and I wasn't able to ask any questions. And so reading through the notes, reading through that document gave me a lot of peace, because I was able to, you know, like I was able to put those pieces together and just put my mind at ease and put my mind to rest for that. And so yeah, it was honestly a really, really bad day. It was a really hard day. I don't know who would have a good day with something like that. But it was honestly made exponentially harder and worse because of those two people who I just felt like, again, just their grief just took up so much space. There was just not any room for anything else. Like, there wasn't room for anyone else to have any sort of anything because their grief just was so big. And so yeah, like anyway, yeah, so I think I'm gonna cut it there. I've been rambling for a while now, and I think that's the bulk of that part of the story. I am going to cover what happened afterwards, because there was a lot of fallout, a lot of aftermath, a lot of just different things that came to light. Even the day after, June 3rd, like, I have all of this stuff coming out, and honestly, it just really felt like every time I thought I had a handle on something, like the floor just dropped out from underneath me every single time. But yeah, honestly, there's still so much more to go through, especially regarding my uncle and the girlfriend, and just even some more of my dad's lies that started to come out that I found out about and was kind of exposed to because people were reaching out to me and asking me about things that I'd never heard of before. So yeah, I will cover that in the next ones for sure. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Remember to keep an open mind and be kind, because the truth will follow behind.